What are we talking about this week? Well, this is fun. Exercise for weight loss. This would usually be the in the news this week segment. But this was published on the 27th of August. A study published in Current Biology magazine. Cell.com has it. I will link to the study so you can have a look. But it basically shows you just how much of a waste of time exercise for weight loss is. And especially for obese people. Turns out the bigger you get, the more your body compensates for exercise, for calories burned through exercise. So I'll take you through the study a bit because I've spoke about this a lot, right? I usually talk about why exercise for weight loss is a waste of time because you're not burning as many calories as you are or as you think you are. And you need to eat to compensate for the exercise. And, you know, you're much better off just eating a bit less if you're looking to lose weight. Because the example I always give, right? And this is just, this is where things like the 500 calorie claim, 500 calories a day thing comes from, is if you want to lose a pound a week, you need to under eat by 3,500 calories a week. Right? You need to be in a calorific deficit for 3,500 calories a week, which is 500 calories a day. And that puts you on track for losing a pound a week. And we know that this is accurate, right? We know that this pretty much works. Those figures are pretty much bang on for almost everybody. And of course, if you weigh 300 pounds, the weight's going to fall off a bit quicker in the first week than it is if you weigh, 150, 160 pounds. Right? But predominantly it holds 500 calorific deficit leads to a weight loss of about a pound a week. If you break it down to very, very basic things. And I'm not going to go into why it's more complicated than that. We're just going to assume that that is true. Right? So 500 calories a day, sorry, not 500 calories a week. So 500 calories a day means that, let's say an hour on the treadmill. Right? Where you burn, 600-700 calories. This is the old magic numbers where you burn 800 calories and therefore, you estimate that at 800 and you eat a bit to compensate. And therefore you lose 500, you undereat by 500 calories a day. Or you burn an extra 500 calories a day, and therefore you're in a calorific deficit if you don't increase your food production by now. Turns out that all that is still correct, but not in the way that we thought it was. And this is phenomenal. So we know that your base energy expenditure, BEE, or basic metabolic rate, is responsible for far more of your calorie burning, your calorie expenditure. And I'm trying to keep this as straightforward in layman terms as possible. Just in case someone writes in, that's not really what it's called. Yeah, okay. I know this. But we're trying to keep it nice and simple. So the amount of calories you burn simply by existing is significantly higher than the amount of calories people burn through exercise and activity levels. As in, sitting on the couch all day and just being alive burns significantly more calories than, say, your average daily walking and all that does. And that makes sense, right? Just because your body's busy all day. So say, on average person, they burn 2,000 calories a day. And I'm plucking that figure out of the air, so don't come at me. For 2,000 calories a day. About 1,600 of that will just be you being alive. And about 400 or 500 of that 2,000 will be you doing stuff. Getting up and walking and being active and all that sort of stuff. The vast majority of calories is just by being alive. And that is your base energy expenditure. And again, I'm oversimplifying this, I know this. But your base energy expenditure is just the stuff you use for being alive and your daily activity levels. Just being there. Right? And I know I'm hammering that point home a bit, but that's important. So, the if you add exercise to this, and this was always the standard sort of approach, that we thought if you burn 2,000 calories just being alive with and just maintenance, then if you exercise on top of that, we can add those calories on top of that. So that example on the treadmill that I use, or going for a run or whatever, if you say you burn 800 calories on the treadmill, and that's an estimate and all that sort of stuff, but we just have to take that as a given. If you burn 800 calories on a treadmill, that means that for that day, you would burn 2,800 calories. Right? 2,000, which is your usual stuff, plus 800. And it now turns out, and this study is solid, that is pretty much not what happens. We cannot use 2,000 plus 800. Because for most people, as this study found, people that are at the 10th percentiles of BMI distribution compensate around 27%, 28% of activity calories. Whereas if you're in the 90th percentile, so compensate 49% of activity calories. So I'll explain what that means. It basically means that if you are not overweight, the obese people, that's the 90th percentile. If you're at the top of the range of BMI level, so obese, morbidly obese, clinically obese, all that sort of stuff, you compensate 49.2%-ish of activity calories. So that means that if you are on that treadmill, so say you need 2,000 calories, so stick into that. You need 2,000 calories just to be alive. That's what you burn, right? And that maintains your weight. Anything you eat on top of that would mean you gain weight. Anything you eat underneath that, below that, means you would lose weight, right? Science. Now, what we used to think was if you did 800 calories of exercise on the treadmill, we now know that as an obese person, that you would end up burning fewer calories of the 2,000. Your body would compensate, would find a way to compensate in your base energy expenditure, so your base metabolic rate and all that sort of stuff. It just slows it down. It just goes, now, wait a minute, I need to slow this down because I've exercised a lot more. So of that 800 calories, you would only net use 400 calories. I'll round it up to 50% for the 49.2. And that's interesting because it means that for most people that used the old example for exercise, especially once you're obese, and we'll stick to the obese levels for now because it's a little bit easier because it's nice enough near that 50%. If you were looking to lose weight and the old methodology that we applied was always 2,000 plus 800 is 2,800 calories. Put yourself in a 500 calorie deficit and you would need 2,300 calories to lose a pound a week, right? 2,000 plus 800 is 2,800 minus 500 to lose a pound a week means you would lose a pound a week. And we now know all of a sudden that's not true because it turns out that it's 2,000 plus 400 instead of the 800 because your body compensates. So it's actually like 1,600 plus 800 because your body takes 400 of the calories you burn from that existing 2,000. So all of a sudden it's 1,600 plus 800. And that means that you're only at 2,400 calories for maintenance. So if you then wanted to lose a pound a week, you need to consume 1,900 calories and not 2,400. And this is hugely important. As you can probably tell, if you're sitting listening to this thinking, I haven't lost weight in 3 or 4 months, even though I've been doing everything right. And my personal trainer said that this is what I should be eating, but I'm not losing any weight. This is why. It's not your PT's fault. We kind of didn't know about this stuff. I've always said it was a waste of time because I think you should lose weight differently. But we weren't really sure why some people, especially obese people, were not losing weight as quickly as non-obese people were. We're not losing fat as quickly as non-obese people were because we didn't know this stuff. And it turns out that once you are obese or morbidly obese, clinically obese, so in that top 90th percentile, so it turns out that losing weight through exercise, and this is just through exercise, is much more difficult. Right? Because, as they say here, individuals with greater fat levels are predisposed to increased adiposity, either because they are stronger energy compensators or because they become stronger compensators as they get fatter. And that is the point. The fatter you get, and I will use that fatter, the more obese you get, the fatter you get, the more difficult it becomes to lose weight through exercise, is what this study is saying. Because you keep compensating more and more until you get to that 50%, that 50% mark. And then it becomes brutally difficult to lose weight through exercise. Because if you're only burning 50% of the calories on top through exercise that you would otherwise use, so a lot of it would be compensated for. If 50%, let me put that better. If 50% of all the calories you burn through exercise, through an hour's worth of exercise, get compensated for, that means you have to, the fatter you get, you have to do more and more exercise to lose weight. And of course, we all know that when you're obese, morbidly obese, clinically obese, till near the top end, exercise actually becomes more and more difficult. Right? So I don't know any morbidly obese person that can do an hour's worth of continuous exercise to the point that it burns 800 calories per session. Right? You just don't. And for those calories to then be compensated for by 50%, so you only actually burn 400. That just shows you that it becomes damn near impossible to use exercise as an effective weight loss strategy. Now, exercise is still important, of course. I'll put that big caveat right in the middle here. For cardiovascular benefits, strength, flexibility, joint protection, and all that sort of stuff. Of course it does. But as far as weight loss goes, the fatter you get, the bigger you get, the more useless it becomes. And this is also interesting at the bottom end. So the people within the normal, so to speak, BMI range, and I'll stick to BMI because I don't mind BMI too much. So people with normal body composition and all that sort of stuff still compensate about 30%. What the actual figure was, 27.8%, I think. And these are fairly accurate and specific figures. Right? It's about 28%. So that's still almost a third. So somebody who is just looking to maintain, and a lot of you may well be, and you're within normal BMI range, and you do some exercise and you eat and all that's normal. If you then think, why do I end up heavier? Is because why do I end up heavier than I should do? It's for the same reason, right? So if you're supposed to burn 2,000 calories, if you just daily maintenance 2,000 calories a day, you exercise 800 calories on top of that through an hour's exercise every day. You actually only, your net gain in calories a day that you burn is only at 70% or 72%, really. But, keep that easy and we'll just say we'll take a third off those 800. So that is 250 calories or something like that, which you can shave off. So that means if you're looking to maintain and you do your exercise and all that, and you consume 2,800 calories a day, you're actually going to be gaining weight slowly but surely by 250 calories a day. And of course, you don't notice that immediately. That's about a pound every 15 days or so, right? 3,500 calories is a pound. So over 2 weeks, over the course of 14 days, you would gain a pound. So after every month, you would end up a kilo heavier. Even though in your mind, you're doing everything right. you're exercising, you're eating well, you don't overconsume calories. Turns out you do overconsume calories. And this is one of the reasons that more and more people are getting heavier. Even people that think they're doing everything right. And that's why I wanted to lead with this, because it shows you just how important this study really is. Because if this is correct, and there's no reason really to doubt why it isn't, why it wouldn't be, then this has a very profound impact on how we should view diet and exercise, and why we should really have a long look at and go back to talking about total daily expenditure and energy expenditure in a completely different way, and why we need to get out of the habit of saying that exercise is a good way to lose weight. It's all diet and exercise, and sleep and stress management and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not saying exercise doesn't have a part to play in it, but it's nowhere near as big as we thought it was. And for personal trainers, this might be very frustrating, and I'm very lucky that this is not my area of PT. This is not what I usually do, because I don't think it's that interesting with regards to client goals, and I think it's frustrating. But it does mean that a lot of personal trainers are going to need to look at how they calculate this sort of stuff. All the exercise calculators can go straight out the window. That is what I'm saying. Unless you add but I need to compensate X amount of calories because my body naturally compensates that. So for weight loss, the implications of this for weight loss. First of all, I think you should never be on a 500 calorie deficit. I think that's too much, and I think it's unsustainable for most people. Right? I think you can be on a 200 calorie deficit and just accept you lose weight slowly. But over the course of a year, first of all, it'll be sustainable. Over the course of a year, you'll still lose a shit ton of weight. Right, 200 calories a day is more than enough of a calorie deficit for average people. Right, and we'll get to that to why that is in a little bit when we talk about how long you should be on a diet for and all that sort of stuff. But 200 calories is manageable. 500 calories just kind of isn't. But if you're going to aim for a 500 calorie deficit, you have to start from your base energy expenditure and subtract 500 calories of that through diet. And then you can say, okay, I am obese and I need to allow for 50% of my calories to be compensated for, that I exercise to be compensated for by diet. So if you burn off 800 calories, you kind of only net burn off 400. And that is what you can then increase your calorie intake by. That also then means that on days that you don't train, that you don't exercise, and you have a rest day here and there, that you don't end up increasing your calorific intake by too much. You don't eat too much on those days because you're already taking it off your base, and therefore you're compensating for every single time you exercise. You can eat a bit too much, eat a bit less. Do you know what I mean? In that, and I might not be explaining this too clearly. I've always said this: if you exercise for an hour, you'll probably eat to compensate. Right? So 800 calories, you only actually burn a net 400. You compensate by eating 200 or 300, and that means that on that day you will only actually lose. You're in a 100 calorie deficit if you don't allow for taking the calories out of your base energy expenditure. You're just your I'm alive sort of thing. Your I'm alive calorie expenditure. I hope that makes sense. If not, read the study. It is a fascinating study, and I think every PT should do kind of. I'm going to be very smug. in this, I was wrong, yet ended up at the right bit. Ended up at the right point. Right? I will say this. Nobody knew this. Nobody knew this. Anybody who said that they knew about this is full of shit. It only came out this week, 27th of August. And there was not even any inclination, as far as I know, towards anybody knowing about just how much this was. I always said it was a waste of time, but that is mainly because I was wrong. I just reached the right conclusion. Nobody knew that your body would compensate to this extent. And therefore, it is huge. And this is a very, very nice study. I'm sure they will do follow-up studies for this. But this shows you that any sort of obesity strategy, we kind of have to move away from the diet and exercise and just focus on diet and sleep and stress management and all this sort of stuff. Exercise is nowhere near as important as what most people, including politicians and all that, say it is. Like I said before, it doesn't mean you shouldn't exercise. You exercise for strength and for health and all that sort of stuff, for injury prevention. But you do not exercise for weight loss.